Top 5 offensive coordinator hires. Now, I realize some of this is still going on, but some of the ones that will go on, unless they may not top these. So I'm confident that this will be a list I will not have to amend. So, number 5, Sean Lewis at Colorado. Comes over from Kent State. On to Deion's staff. This is an offense that was pretty prolific in the MAC, and he was the head coach at Kent State. Now comes to be the OC at Colorado. I think that's going to work out well for them, at least on that side of the ball early on. But, Craig, you and I were talking about it off the air. That's the potential to be kind of like a roller coaster of a situation in year one, I would think, because of where they're coming from. Deion can't expect the same. He can maybe expect the same results over a longer period of time at Colorado that he had at Jackson State, but I don't think he can expect the same results over the shorter period of time at Colorado that he had at Jackson State.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a whole different ball game. I mean, he's not going to be starting off the year as the odds-on favorite like he did this year.
Yeah.
It might not be even expected to make a bowl game, although in the portal era, I don't know what expectations are, and I know that they're going to be able to flip that roster pretty quickly. But yeah, it's just a total unknown, man. I mean, it's glossy and it's shiny, but that doesn't always mean it's good. You know what I mean? So they're putting lipstick on that program, and it remains to be seen of just how much actual structural change or improvements they're making there. But it's interesting to be able to kind of take a peek in there from time to time, and there's definitely mixed reactions to, I guess, the video that came out of like Tim Brewster and playing like drill sergeant, like telling guys to stand up and sit back down, stand back up, like kind of deal. But yeah, I mean, they've definitely got the marketing behind themselves, but this is, it's going to look familiar to Baylor fans, and I guess to a lot of college football fans at this point. I mean, he runs that same style of offense, it's the Bryles type of offense. And obviously that's finding a lot of success and has been for years and years now, but you're starting to have seen it leak over into the SEC the last couple of years with guys like Josh Heupel, obviously Kendall Bryles over the last few years, Jeff Lebby over the last few years, so on and so forth. And of course, then guys like Kiffin have interjected there. It's mutated, but he's from that same, philosophy. So they should be up tempo. I would imagine that if they have anything, they'll have good skill guys. I'm not sold on his son at quarterback. But, we'll see. It's a huge step up in competition, so that'll be interesting.
Well, I think Shedeur should have been probably playing at a Colorado, like out of high school. Like that's where his talent level was, and he was at Jackson State. So I think it'll be – but, again, it's all about everything around him, too, the offensive line and everything else he has to build, which wasn't good at Colorado last year. Nothing was. So they're starting from absolute scratch. Number 4, Graham Harrell at Purdue. The Big Ten is finally, they're the last conference that's into maybe, and I know the weather there compared to the weather other places. Like, you'll get a couple of snow games in Colorado. You'll get a couple of cold weather games in the Pacific Northwest and maybe Penn State. Well, I mean, Penn State's in the Big Ten. You don't, like, in the South, you get, like, very few cold, like, where the offense can't function games. And in the North, you had to have, in the most of Big Ten country, you had to have an offense that could travel, and you had to build your team around defense. But if you're going to keep pace with your new counterparts on the West Coast that are coming in, and you're going to keep pace with trying to beat teams in the SEC, then you've got to start bringing in maybe wider open offenses. And Purdue doing this with Graham Harrell, already with hiring Ryan Walters, who runs a really good defense. He ran that at Illinois. This is a really interesting dynamic here. I think it'll work out. I think it'll work out well because I think these are both really good coaches. And Graham Harrell bringing that expertise into the Big Ten. And we'll talk about a couple other Big Ten coaches here in a second. But I think that's going to be a really interesting thing at Purdue.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned I was talking about the Bryles tree. I mean, his main branch that he swung off of going back to Sean Lewis was Dino Babers.
Yeah.
So one of the first guys to venture out as a coach and really start establishing that elsewhere. So that's where he's coming from after some time there with Babers at Syracuse. So that'll be interesting. But, yeah, with Harrell, I mean, obviously he comes from the Mike Leach tree, the air raid. And I think, good news for he and the family is that they're in a place that feels relatively stable. Unlike his last 2 jobs, where he was in West Virginia last year and obviously, played a hand in JT Daniels coming on over. And then by the end of the year, JT Daniels isn't even the starter and he's back in the transfer portal. Obviously, Neil Brown's not on the sturdiest of seats or coolest of seats at the moment. So that was kind of a very hit or miss situation to walk into. And then prior to that, he was sitting there in the offices at USC as the, entire program was crumbling down to be made back up in the image of Lincoln Riley. And so, he's there as Lincoln Riley and staff start to take over. So It's been a rough couple of years of not really knowing what's going to happen next. And it had to wait a long time for this phone call. Was seemingly going to sit out there for a while. So, yeah, I like the direction that Purdue's already going. Obviously, huge pickup in the transfer portal with Hudson Card. That was massive for them to get him. And so I'm excited. I think that's a program that is going to be fun to watch under some new leadership. And I think that Graham Harrell's a guy that certainly hasn't forgotten how to coach offense. I think he is a guy who's been kind of a circumstance of his environment. Now, he's obviously going to be in a very stable situation where Walters is going to be able to build this thing from the ground up. And so I'm excited to see kind of how he plays a role in that, because it is a lot different than what he's been in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and look, Purdue quarterback from Texas, the greatest quarterback they ever had was from, also Austin, Texas. Yeah. So in Drew Brees. And I do, look, with deference to Bob Greasy, like, Let's say it. Drew Brees is that dude. Mm-hmm. Number 3, Phil Longo at Wisconsin. Another guy he's bringing in Len Dawson. Okay, I forgot about him as well. But I'm still taking Drew Brees.
Who said Len Dawson?
Jack did.
How do you know? You know Len Dawson? Okay, very well done. Yeah. Give you your props. Hey,
good
deal. Good on you. Good on you.
Good deal. But he thinks Robert Pattinson's the first Batman. So I don't know.
Okay, well then I just forget all that. So, we respect Michael Keaton on this particular version of this show. Or no,
absolutely. But Phil Longo, Wisconsin, all 3 of the quarterbacks that they brought in the portal are all from Texas. They'll also have the same private quarterback coach in Kevin Murray. But Phil Longo brought them all in. Luke Fickell's going wide open at Wisconsin. They have kind of stagnated in that. And look, they've had really great seasons doing what they do. And there are going to be some games where they're going to have to figure out how that spread is going to work in the weather in Madison. But at least they're trying it. And Phil Longo's had a lot of success. And I'm looking forward to seeing Tanner Mordecai and then Nick Evers and whoever else master it there at Wisconsin, because I think it's going to make them a whole lot more fun.
Yeah, certainly. He, obviously is leaving a pretty solid quarterback that we'll be talking a lot about in NFL circles and college football circles first and foremost for the next couple of years, and Drake May. But they went and really, I think, did themselves some favors in the transfer portal. Imagine not having it. Again, that's another one of those schools you look at and like, imagine not having the transfer portal, like what it would look like otherwise. So that was a feather in their cap, and bringing Longo over is also the ability to go and be flexible and to get Nick Evers and to have him kind of waiting in the wings. And to have a guy like Tanner Mordecai, who's, certainly familiar with stretching the field and going vertical, and that's what Phil Longo is going to want to do, is stretch the field, go vertical. It's not going to be old school smash mouth Big Ten, the way that you think of it stereotypically. But they'll be able to run the football as well. But, yeah, I think that Mordecai, you talk about just wanting to throw the ball around. That's what he can do. Now, he's got to always be careful, of course, with the interceptions. Those can get a little, squirrely if he's not careful. But I love Tanner. Loved watching him ever since we were covering him at Midway, and to watch his journey to where now he's playing in the Big Ten at Wisconsin is just so wild. But, he and the other QBs will have a lot of fun with Longo, and I'm excited to see kind of how they shake up that Badgers program with Luke Fickell now in charge.
Yeah, Brad on the chat room says he doesn't think it's the same now with artificial turf there at Madison, so maybe it's not going to be as bad. It's still snow, and you got to deal with all that stuff. So, probably maybe a little bit better. Number 2. And I would put this guy at number 1, except for the number 1 guy I'll get into. Number 2, Garrett Riley at Clemson. Going to be a head coach in a couple years. This was big in that Clemson needed a fresh voice from outside the program. Dabo doesn't do that often, but he went and did it. And I think maybe he didn't do it the last time around because he felt no reason to think anybody was nipping at their heels, so he could experiment with continuing to keep in the staff. That is not the case in the ACC anymore. If Clemson wants to stay top dog, they've got to reinvigorate themselves. This was a fantastic move, getting Garrett Riley out of TCU and at Clemson.
Yeah, I do think that Sonny Dykes deserves some credit. I just don't know what percentage to tribute to him, but I mean, I think that his oversight certainly could do nothing but help Garrett Riley tremendously. So I'll be curious if there's any like downside to not having a voice like that. I know Clemson's got capable offensive guys, but Sonny Dykes is one of the best. So I think that was a great combination.
And Jeff Scott being there as the kind of analyst or whatever he is. Yeah,
that was a coup for them to get him back in the way that they got him back, and not necessarily like back as OC or or something like that. So I do think that was a really well thought out and well executed plan by Dabo, who kind of needed that, but went to show you like, no, I still know what I'm doing over here. We still are winning double digits, year in and year out.
And what I think Jeff Scott is he's kind of maybe the Dabo translator, right? So so you can do what Dabo wants, but like he can ease him into that, and then whatever happens with Jeff happens down the line. So, but I still think it's great.
No, I think it's a great move. I think as far as a pure quarterback prospect, Klubnik is a step up over Max Duggan.
Yeah.
But Max Duggan had a lot of other intangibles that made him really good, and Klubnik, it will remain to be seen on when he acquires those or what he already has or what have you, because he's far from a polished and finished product. But I think this was as splashy as you could have gotten, while also not being like splashy but not making sense. It's a splashy move, but it also made sense. It wasn't a move for the sake of a move. It wasn't a move just to grab headlines. It was a move that does that, but it also addresses that your big need to shake up this offense and to develop Cade Klubnik. So this was out of nowhere as far as I was concerned. Maybe there had been a little scuttlebutt. I don't really recall now, a few days removed from it, but I just remember the feeling of when I saw that graphic land going, whoa. And, I think that was the intention with that hire. So, rising star, like you said, I don't know about a couple years for a head coach, but sometime in the next few years, that's the trajectory that he's on. That's what you would expect. So I'm excited to see, him, Klubnik, and the rest of the gang out there in Clemson.
And number one, this is a guy who I do think, after being a coordinator for maybe not too long, will be a head coach somewhere. Brian Hartline at Ohio State. This is the probably most legit position coach in the country at wide receiver, and the best recruiter at that position for a position coach that you could possibly imagine, given how deep and amazing Ohio State's wide receivers have been. Kevin Wilson left Ohio State to go to Tulsa. They've promoted Brian Hartline as the new offensive coordinator. I personally think he's probably going to crush that gig. And again, he's got to have to break in a new quarterback this year, but they've been pretty good about that lately. So young guys are not. And I guess this is Devin Brown. Is that the Devin Brown's the one that they're going to try to and work out this year and feel good about. So I think this is I put him over Garrett Riley only because I do think Brian Hartline is going to be a head coach faster than Garrett Riley will.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite possible. I mean, getting the transfer from Gebbia earlier was very interesting because that's a veteran there, and they're without C.J. Stroud now, so it's life after Stroud, and they've managed various quarterbacks over the years to move on from one to the next pretty successfully, just like name one, Justin Fields, J.T. Barrett, so on and so forth. So they'll be fine. I mean, hell, like half the starting quarterbacks in college football are like Ohio State transfers, it feels like, at least. I mean, I'm probably just thinking that because Quinn Ewers alone. But, obviously highly super successful recruiter. Amazing job done there with the wide receivers at Ohio State. But this is a jump up now. Now, there's definitely a lot worse places to be doing it in terms of accumulating talent and all that, but a great opportunity, a fast rising name, or already was risen, and now it's just a matter of like what other, attributes can he have outside of being the outstanding 5-star hunter that lands all these badasses for the Buckeyes. But I'm very curious about this. This is a long time coming, so it'll be very interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Craig. Thank you